From my office on the 32nd floor of Midwest Capital Group, I watched the city lights of Atlanta flicker against the night sky. To everyone else, I was a success, one of the top financial consultants in the city, respected and admired. Yet, beneath the polished surface, I was exhausted, constantly chasing an approval that remained painfully out of reach. My parents, Diane and Richard Harper, were proud of my sister Samantha, the golden child who could do no wrong. They paid for her tuition at Columbia University, funded her lavish wedding, and celebrated her life milestones with enthusiasm. In contrast, my journey through Harvard Business School came with a condition: a $500,000 loan from my parents, which I was expected to repay in full with interest. I had made 120 payments so far, totaling over $600,000. Despite my efforts, I was never enough in their eyes. Samantha's life seemed perfect. She married Zach, a successful real estate developer, in a wedding that cost nearly $3 million. I later learned that part of the expenses came from my repayments. I had unknowingly funded her dream wedding while struggling to pay off my own debt. They never saw me as their daughter, just as the responsible one who could be relied upon to pay her dues. The pain of that realization was always present, but I buried it beneath layers of work and ambition. I convinced myself that if I worked hard enough, if I became successful enough, they would finally see my worth. I was wrong. That night, I declined an invitation from my colleague Amelia to join her for brunch. "I'm visiting my parents," I said, keeping my voice casual. The truth was more complicated. Every visit reminded me of my place in the family, an outsider looking in. Samantha was the daughter they cherished, and I was the obligation they tolerated. I always hoped things would change, but deep down, I knew better. On my way home, the rain poured relentlessly, mirroring the heaviness I felt inside. The roads were slick, and before I could react, the taxi skidded, crashing into the guardrail. Pain shot through my body, sharp and unforgiving, before darkness consumed me. I woke up in a hospital room, immobilized by pain. Fractures in my arm and leg, cracked ribs, internal injuries. It was a miracle I survived. The days that followed were a blur of medication and loneliness. My friend Chloe visited every day, bringing encouragement and warmth. But my parents were absent, too preoccupied to care. I left voicemails, hoping for the comfort of my mother's voice, but the call that finally came was cold and detached. Samantha just had her first baby. My mother informed me, her tone devoid of concern. "Nobody cares about your accident right now." I hadn't even known my sister was in labor. They didn't think to tell me. Worse, they accused me of being dramatic, of wanting attention, and dismissed my pain as an inconvenience. I was left alone to process the depth of their indifference, the realization that I was never truly a part of their family. 3 days after the accident, I scrolled through Facebook, my heart sinking as I saw photos from Samantha's baby shower in Hawaii. My parents smiled, champagne glasses raised, basking in the glow of their perfect family moment. It was a celebration of wealth and privilege, complete with gourmet food, luxury gifts, and a beachfront backdrop. The caption under one photo read, "The best gift for Samantha, including a special contribution from Natalie." I felt the blood drain from my face. They used my repayments to fund this extravagant event, while I lay in a hospital bed, broken and forgotten. I had sacrificed my own happiness, cut back on my needs, just to keep up with the loan payments. And they had the audacity to use that money for Samantha's perfect life. The anger was visceral, raw, and overwhelming. I realized then that I was nothing more than a means to an end for them, a reliable source of money. It wasn't just favoritism, it was exploitation. They took everything I gave without a second thought, while I struggled to earn a love they would never give. I picked up my phone and called Evan, my college friend and trusted lawyer. "I need your help," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I need to take back what's mine." Evan arrived the next day, his expression serious as he read through the loan contract. "Your parents structured this as a voluntary repayment," he explained. "Legally, you can stop paying without consequence." It felt surreal. All those years of struggle, all those sacrifices, and it was never mandatory. I was paying out of obligation, not necessity. Then, Evan uncovered another truth. My grandparents had left behind a vast estate with a clause in their will that protected the grandchildren's happiness. My parents were violating that clause by using my money to fund Samantha's lifestyle. "You have every right to claim your inheritance," Evan said. I felt a sense of liberation I hadn't known before. For the first time, I had the power to change my story, to break free from the chains they placed on me. I decided to stop all repayments and claim my share of the estate. I was done being used. I sent the notification through Evan, knowing it would reach them while they were still in Hawaii. The backlash came swiftly. My phone lit up with calls from my parents, their voicemails alternating between anger and guilt-tripping. They accused me of being ungrateful, of betraying the family. I didn't listen to any of them. I knew they were only angry because their financial safety net was gone. A week later, they showed up at my hospital room, their faces contorted with rage. "Your repayments were meant to help Samantha," my mother shouted, her voice trembling. "How could you be so selfish?" I looked at them, the people I had spent my whole life trying to please, and felt nothing. No fear, no sadness, just clarity. "I've given you everything," I said quietly, "and it was never enough. I'm done." My father tried to guilt-trip me, claiming they were in financial trouble, that they had used my money to pay off debts and fund Samantha's life. But I didn't care. Their choices were not my responsibility. I was no longer their lifeline. They left, defeated, and for the first time, I felt free. Free from the expectations that had defined my life. Free from the need for their approval. I was finally living for myself. The fallout from my decision was immediate and brutal. My parents launched a campaign of guilt, calling incessantly, leaving voicemails filled with accusations. They framed me as the villain, the ungrateful daughter who turned her back on her family. But I stood my ground, refusing to be manipulated again. They were only upset because I had cut off their financial safety net. Their love was conditional, tied to how useful I was to them. It hurt to accept that truth, but it was necessary. Evan moved swiftly, filing the legal paperwork to halt all repayments and secure my claim to my grandparents' estate. It was a tangled mess, decades of financial entanglements that revealed the full extent of my parents' deceit. They had leveraged the estate as collateral for multiple loans, all to maintain an image of wealth and perfection. The inheritance meant for Samantha and me had been gambled away on illusions. I felt a mix of anger and sadness as the layers of deception unfolded. They weren't just playing favorites, they were digging themselves out of a financial hole, using me as the ladder. Yet, they never saw me as the one who saved them. Only the one who failed to live up to their impossible expectations. The legal proceedings moved forward with momentum. My grandparents were shocked by what Evan uncovered. They had trusted my parents to safeguard the estate, believing it would one day provide for Samantha and me. When they learned the truth, they were furious. My grandfather called me from his house in the Chicago suburbs, his voice heavy with guilt. "I never knew, Natalie. I never knew they were doing this to you." His words broke me. I had always thought my struggle was mine alone, a silent burden I carried to protect the family's image. But my grandparents were on my side, devastated by the betrayal. They revoked my parents' management rights, putting the estate solely in my name. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. I never wanted to win like this. I used the funds to buy my own apartment downtown, a sanctuary that was wholly mine. It was beautiful, spacious, light-filled, with a view of the city I once felt trapped in. But as I stood by the window, the emptiness crept in. I had broken free from their expectations, but I was alone. I still hadn't heard from Samantha. The silence weighed on me, heavy and unresolved. I wondered if she knew the price I had paid for her perfect life. I wondered if she cared. The knock on my hospital room door came on a rainy afternoon, 2 weeks after the legal notices were delivered. I looked up, expecting to see Chloe or Evan, but my heart sank when I saw Samantha standing there, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked fragile, broken in a way I had never seen before. "I heard about the loan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know they were using your money." "I swear, Natalie, I didn't know." I wanted to believe her, but the resentment was too deep. How could she not have known? How could she live in luxury while I struggled under the weight of debt? She sat down, her shoulders slumped, and began to talk, the words tumbling out in a confession that shattered every illusion I had about her life. Her marriage to Zach wasn't perfect. In fact, it was falling apart. He was furious when he found out about the loans, about how deeply her parents were entangled in their finances. Their house, their lifestyle, even the baby shower. They were all funded by my repayments. "He's leaving me," she choked out, tears streaming down her face. "He said he can't stay married to someone who lives off other people's money." I felt a pang of sympathy despite myself. Zach wasn't just wealthy, he was self-made, proud of his independence. He couldn't tolerate the lies, the falsehoods her parents built to maintain appearances. Samantha's world was crumbling, and she had nowhere to go. Our parents were financially ruined, their debts exposed by the legal proceedings. The image they worked so hard to maintain was gone, replaced by whispers and gossip about their lies and deception. They were shunned, stripped of their status. Samantha looked at me, her face pleading. "I didn't know they were using you like that. I thought they were just helping me. I never realized it was at your expense. I never wanted this." Her pain was genuine, her shame palpable. But I couldn't forget how her happiness had come at my cost. "You lived in a bubble, Samantha. You took everything they gave you without asking where it came from. You wanted to be the perfect daughter so badly you never saw the cracks." She sobbed, her shoulders shaking. "I just wanted to make them proud." Her words echoed my own pain, the desire to be loved, to be accepted. It was the same struggle, but we were on different sides of it. She was the one they cherished, and I was the one they used. I felt my anger soften, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. We were both victims of their expectations, trapped by the roles they forced on us. But while I fought to be seen, Samantha played the part they wanted, even if it meant losing herself. I sighed, the weight of resentment loosening its grip. "I don't hate you, Samantha, but I can't just forgive you either. It's going to take time." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I understand. I want to fix this. I want to start over. I didn't know if we could. The damage ran deep, the scars too fresh. But I was willing to try. She was my sister, after all. And despite everything, I still loved her." The legal proceedings concluded with a decisive victory. My parents were cut off from the estate, left to face the consequences of their lies and deception. Their debts were astronomical, their reputation ruined. They moved to a small town to escape the scandal, living off my father's modest pension. It was a stark fall from grace. I paid for my father's medical bills anonymously. I didn't owe them anything, but I wasn't cruel. I wouldn't let their sins make me bitter. I chose compassion because I refused to be like them. Samantha and Zach moved to a modest apartment, determined to rebuild their lives with honesty. She pursued her dream of becoming a teacher, something she had given up to meet our parents' expectations. We spoke often, rebuilding our relationship slowly, with caution and care. On Christmas Eve, they came to my new apartment. It was the first time we spent the holiday without our parents. The evening was simple but warm, filled with laughter and memories. I held Samantha's son, Ethan, in my arms, his innocent smile reminding me that we were starting over. I looked out the window, the city lights bright and beautiful. I was finally free, living life on my own terms. The journey had been painful, but I was stronger for it. I had reclaimed my identity, broken free from the chains of their expectations. As I watched the snow fall softly outside, I knew I was ready to forgive. Not for them, but for me. It was time to let go and truly live. I smiled, my heart lighter than it had been in years. I was finally free.